There's only two things that delivering software guarantees you, right? And one is more software, and the other is technical debt, right? Those are the only two things you're guaranteed. Value, right? Does anybody want this? Will they try it? Will they use it? Will they use it again? Will they pay you for it? Will they tell a friend? Will they continue to pay you for it? Like these are the kinds of things that tell us that we've delivered value.
Hey guys, today I'm here with an old friend, Jeff Gothelf. Hey Jeff, how you doing?
Hi, Debbie. Nice to be here.
Thanks for being here. So Jeff is many things, among them the co-author of one of my favorite books, Lean UX, and Sense and Respond, and a forthcoming book on OKRs. Today, Jeff works as a keynote speaker, a trainer, a coach with large organizations, helping them build better products and to build the cultures that build better products. Both very important things. And today we get to talk with Jeff about OKRs, objectives and key results, something that I know many tech leaders have used and are iterating towards getting better at year after year, quarter after quarter. What I didn't realize until I did some research was OKRs have actually been around since the 50s. And
Yeah.
Peter Drucker is kind of like the father, right? Like the OG here. Like he invented management by objectives, then it made its way to Intel, and then it made its way to Google. So
Yeah.
while Google is kind of credited as getting OKRs out there, it was actually, decades before that when folks started really kind of managing through these key results that we use today.
Yeah.
What I really want, I'm hoping to get from you today is you talk to teams all the time about OKRs. I've watched many of your posts online, many of your talks, clips of your talks. I want to know, like, really what I want to get to is like, what are the mistakes people make, and what can we do to avoid those mistakes? But first, like, do you have any sense, like, how many companies are using them? Like, is everybody using them? Or are they still fairly new? Like, I know Stride's been using them for a few years, but we started with something else and switched to OKRs. Like, what percentage of companies you think are kind of on the bandwagon?
Yeah, I don't have an exact number, but it feels like, these days, particularly in public setting, that the companies that aren't doing it or that haven't tried it at least are the sort of the odd person out in that.
Okay.
It's a lot like Agile in this case, right? If you
Right.
were in a room full
Right.
of people, how many of you are doing Agile? Like 100% of the hands would go up. I think in this particular case, if you were to ask in any kind of random room of techies, how many of you are doing OKRs or at least have tried them, I guess 80% at least have given it a shot. I think a lot of folks, like with Agile, have failed, but this is definitely, and this is not doing me any favors, but this is definitely the flavor of the moment when it comes to management ideas.
Yeah. And so I would mimic that with what I've seen. I talked to tons of CTOs and chief product officers and CEOs, and OKRs are coming up almost always, and I would say probably about 80% of the time. And I love the parallel to Agile, where it's like, all right, just because you've done it for 1 year or 1 quarter doesn't mean that you really understand it and really understand it in your organization. How many ought you have? How ought you trickle it down, right? And what's good enough for you? Um, right? I talk to people about it all the time. Like, how agile is agile enough? Right? What's good enough for
Yeah.
OKRs? And so, what's like? How do you see people trip over our toes? Like, what's your number one, two, and three things where you're like, oh, if I had a nickel, like, how
Yeah.
would I help people through that?
So there's a couple things here. I think that the number one, so the most critical change, the kind of mindset shift that has to happen in organizations for OKRs to succeed. And by far, I think the hardest thing to grasp for organizations is this idea of managing the outcomes, that your key
Mhm.
results have to be outcomes. There are books out there, very popular books, that don't address this as strictly as I do. Um, but I believe that if your key result is anything other than an outcome, and the only other thing it typically is an output,
But right.
right? Then we really haven't changed anything. The change is your key results are outcomes. And to be clear, outcomes are measures of human behavior and hopefully the humans who are consuming whatever it is that you make. And so for organizations, this becomes this is the critical thing that makes this different, and this is the thing that makes this hard. And so that's the number one thing is to get folks out of this mindset that, if our objective is qualitative and aspirational and inspirational and, you know, aggressive and time bound, right? So we
Mhm.
want to be the number one e-commerce destination for, um, I don't know, writing supplies
Sure.
in the United States or whatever it is, right? That's
Yeah.
that's what we want to be. We want to be like that's an aggressive, qualitative. What does number one mean, right? And the
Right.
key results, should be things like, the percentage of repeat shoppers, the average order value, the maybe LTV of a lifetime value of a customer or something like that, or customer acquisition metrics. But those are all measures of human behavior that tell you whether or not you're the number one, writing implementation e-commerce site in the US. What people tend to do though, and this is where this is the first place where it gets hard is they'll say things like, well, we'll be the number one, online e-commerce destination for writing implements when we ship the new website,
Right.
or
Right.
when we've built the
Right.
mobile app, or we've got the new call centers online, or whatever, right? And the assumption there, and it's an assumption baked in 100 years of management theory, is that the making of a thing necessarily indicates value in, delivered to the market.
Mhm.
And when we were manufacturing things, and when you're manufacturing a physical product, that makes sense. Like I made a car, so and that's, maybe even somebody even bought the car, then I've delivered
Right.
value to the market. But the delivery of software doesn't indicate. The line I've been using forever is that there's only two things that delivering software guarantees you, right? And one is more software, and the other is technical debt, right? Those are the only two things you're guaranteed.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Value, right? Does anybody want this? Will anybody look
Right.
for it? Will they try it? Will they use it? Will they use it again? Will they pay you for it? Will they tell a friend? Will they continue to pay you for it? Like these are the kinds of things that tell us that we've delivered value. And because we live in a continuous software world, the delivery of value, the delivery of software should be, it's not yet in all organizations, but generally speaking, it's a non-event, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right. And I think that's interesting because teams spend so much time and money, they pour their hearts, and to then say it should be a non-event is kind of like it's heart wrenching. But what you're saying is, if you kind of state it in another way, um, you know, is it possible to deliver the software and also nobody uses your product?
yes,
Yes.
100%.
Right, exactly, and I
Happens all
think
the
that's
time.
it, right? And I think that's the kind of that helps me gain clarity around when I'm creating key results. Like if I tried to kind of pressure test them against like, okay, if I do this thing and the real thing that I want is there is no direct correlation, then maybe the key result is wrong. Maybe it's not outcome driven,
Yeah.
right? So I get it. What are you thinking?
Look, I mean, there's, when I started working professionally, we worked on something for 9 months or 12 months or 18 months
Yeah.
before we shipped anything. I worked at America Online where we literally had to print things on CDs, like
Mhm.
15 million at a time. And so,
Yeah.
and then we would ship it and then we'd wait, right? Did we ship anything of value? Did it work? And so because we'd spent so much time on it, and because it was, the next thing was like, hey, now we will print 15 million copies of these things and send them in the mail to everybody. We did have a party. It was not a non-event. Like
Right.
we got a T-shirt,
Right.
that had the name
You
of the
get it.
project on
Yeah.
it, and we had a real big party, especially in AOL's heyday. The parties were very nice.
Yeah.
Um, you know, um, but the reality is we didn't know if we delivered any value today. I mean, look, the statistic that we wrote about in Sense and Response. So Sense and Response was published in 2017, which means we did our research in 2015 and 2016. The
Okay.
statistic we published in Sense and Response said that Amazon pushes code to production every 11.6 seconds,
Right.
right? Today, that stat is every second, right? So
Right.
7, 8 years later, it's every second,
Exactly.
right? So the delivery of software is a non-event.
Yeah,
in
they're
their
not getting a t-shirt
organizations.
every second, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly, right, I'm not having a party every second. It's absolutely impossible.
Right.
And so if the delivery of the thing is not the measure of success anymore, because we can deliver continuously, we can deliver every day, every hour, every minute, every second in some extreme cases, right? Then the measure of success has to be something else. It has to be, did we actually meaningfully and in a positive way impact the lives of the people who consume the thing that we make? And so this is the first thing. So most organizations incentivize velocity or delivery of software, right? Output.
Yeah.
Um, Many of the organizations I work with, managed task lists, like
Right.
how many of your tasks did you complete? And the incentive structures are built around that, and so it becomes it's a simple change that has a lot of rippling effects.
But let me
Yeah.
let me ask you, or kind of ask you if it's ever okay to do an output driven key result, given what you just said. And this is a selfish question. So at Stride, we use key results, and um, all but one are outcome driven.
Mhm.
And we have one that is, we know that it's output driven, and that is that we will create 2 blog posts a week.
Yeah.
And the reason why we explicitly called this one out is because the value to us was creating the muscle of the organization,
Yeah.
creating this content that we then hope will be valuable once we share it. And so what we're doing is we're creating for 1 quarter this intentional output driven metric. And then once we create that muscle and have some muscle memory, then we're going to then shift to an outcome driven. But we did explicitly call it out. But interestingly enough, we have had so much debate internally because we have, drank the outcome Kool-Aid, if you will. But yet and still we kind of just did it. And I'm wondering if you think that was a mistake.
I mean, look, I'm not gonna say it's a mistake, right? 'Cause I don't think
You
people
can
make
tell me it's a
mistakes
mistake. It's
here.
okay.
No, 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 it's not. Like, I don't think it's a mistake, but I think you're right. It's an output. Like, let's be
Right.
super clear. It's a
It is
tactic.
now.
Like, why not
Exactly.
make it 3 blog posts or 1 blog? Like, how
Right.
many blog posts is enough,
No
right? And I
idea.
think right?
Right.
And so the question that I would tend to ask is, what do you hope people will be doing differently, um, after they've consumed your blog posts,
Right.
right? And what you're saying is, look, right now, I'm not actually concerned about. Well, you didn't say this, but like, the goal isn't readership; it's the muscle to kind of build this kind of discipline and the skill
Right.
inside the
For only a
organization.
short while, right? And
Yeah,
then and again, I understand what you're saying. So it's a kind of a good takeaway. It's like, all right, if this kind of highlights the issue with output driven, like why two? Why not one? Why not
yeah,
four? Why
yeah,
because we have no idea
right,
what value one widget, if you will, is going to create, right? Um, and so, yeah, that really kind of helps me put the kind of tie the ends together. And again, like I feel kind of confident that the output key result is short lived, and then the need to very quickly switch to the outcome driven key result so that we can really then go back and adjust,
yeah.
right? Because it's not really the blog posts that we want. It's
The
the
readership,
engagement, the
the
readership
engagement,
rates,
yeah.
those things that we will define. So, okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's a helpful conversation. So
But look,
what do
it highlights an interesting thing that comes up a lot. I think is kind of a common anti-pattern, is that folks say, "Oh, key result's a number," right? There's a number in there, 2 blog posts,
that
right?
sounds great. It
Right,
sounds
it
like you're
sounds great.
doing something. It
Right,
sounds like you're
and it's
making
human
progress.
behavior, right? Like,
Right,
some human, assuming not ChatGPT, is writing the blog posts, right?
right,
And so it feels like human behavior, but it's not. It's actually it's an action that you're taking in order to drive, hopefully, some meaningful behavior with your users. I'll give you an example. Like, I did an OKR workshop. This is years ago now, with a company called Metro. Now, they're a European company based in Dusseldorf. and they're in grocery stores and supplying of grocery stores and lots of other 200,000 person company, right? And I did a half day OKR workshop with the C-suite, which was
Okay.
fascinating. And they were talking about how um, one thing they were trying to create was an increase in year over year turnover per store, right? Which is a nice outcome.
Yep.
And so one of the other outcomes that they had put in there as a key result was 80% of the products on our shelves will be our brand rather than
Okay.
external branded products. Okay.
Interesting.
That's
Okay.
not an outcome.
Right. No.
Sounds like an
Sounds
outcome. It's
great.
even got a percentage, which is what
Right.
I advocate for,
Sounds great.
right? It sounds amazing,
Yeah.
but it's a tactic. It's an
It
output. It's a feature of the store, right? The
right.
feature of the store is that 80% of the products are Metro branded products, right? The outcome is, do people buy more Metro branded products, or would they prefer sort of third party brands in there, and as measured by return shoppers, average order value, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, like actual customer behaviors, right? And so a lot of organizations are like, look, it's a number and it measures some kind of
Yeah.
behavior that somebody did, but it's always like, is it a behavior of the people that you're serving? I think is a good question. Like, what will your
Right.
customers be doing differently if you achieve the objective? Is a great way to think about your key result.
That's a really great question. And so are you saying, let's say a team will create their quarterly key results. Really, kind of what I just heard you say is like for every single key result, you kind of want to ask that question, right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, when we achieve this thing, what will our customers be doing differently?
Hmm.
And if you cannot answer that, or if you have someone who's kind of their job it is to like listen for like the inconsistencies or the find the missing link, and if you can't really link it, if you can't honestly truly link it,
Yeah.
um then maybe try again.
Well, the answer is verbs. It's verbs versus nouns,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Like, what
Yeah.
would people
Yeah.
be doing differently if we achieve the objective? Mobile app. That's just nonsense, right? It doesn't make any
it's
sense, right?
it's
Like,
yes.
they will, 50% of purchases will come through the mobile channel. All right, super cool. Like, that's a fundamentally different thing.
Right.
And
Verbs.
so,
Okay. Verbs versus nouns. I got it. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah. That's a really big takeaway. And a nice. The reason why I'm digging in here is because you know uh, everyone's busy, and we think we're doing a good job. We get our OKRs, and we kind of just want to get to doing it. We're like, all right, we did our strategy. We're going to put in a small thing of measurables. We put a number on it. Great, tie a bow and move on.
yeah,
And I'm trying to dig into, you know, avoiding the 6, 12 months later where teams go, I thought we set the things. Why aren't the things happening? We set them. Like we
yeah,
set them and maybe we achieved them. Why did we not get the results? And so if you can and really kind of poke holes up front, okay, verbs versus nouns.
yeah,
Great. That's an easy kind of mental mindset for everyone in the room to come to. And then all it takes is one person to say, I think this one's not quite where it is. So, all right, that's great. So, what else do teams get wrong most often? What's your kind of like one? Let's do like one or two more kind of big things that
yeah.
you see most often.
So look, so a lot of organizations feel like the bulk of the work is writing a syntactically correct and strategically
Mm,
relevant key result. And
right.
yeah, look, that's not super difficult, but it does take a couple of practice runs to
Okay.
get not only well written OKRs, but ones that actually make sense, like where the KRs match the O's, right?
Right.
And then it leads and it kind of supports the product strategy or the company strategy, which is great. But to your point, they're like, okay, great. Now let's tie that up. We're done with that. Let's get to work, right? And what generally happens is, well, we already have a backlog of work. We have a
Right.
pile of it over there, so let's
Right.
just start doing it, right? And so what either happens is they start doing the backlog of work and ignore the OKRs,
Mhm.
right? Well, because we've got that backlog of work. Or the other anti pattern that I see a lot is that they will write OKRs that match the existing backlog of work, right? So sort of reverse engineering the OKRs to match the work you're already planning on doing so that we don't have to change anything, right?
Well,
While we,
that's I've seen this so many times, and one cause I've seen, I don't know if you've seen it too, is that like we already have enough on our plate.
yeah,
And so people, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, say, like, I'm not adding anything else. So either you can have your, number and I'm not going to pay attention to it, or if you're making me create a number, I'm just going to pull it out from what I'm already doing because what I'm telling you is tomorrow I'm just going to go back to doing the thing that I was doing yesterday.
yeah,
Right. And so, yeah, I've seen that. And so it's interesting that you've seen that as well. So how to resolve that without making the like, because you're at, like, if you want a key result, you're asking teams to then either stop doing something, start doing something. How do you
yeah.
rectify?
Yes. So this is where it gets. This is where it gets like. This is where the change actually happens, and this is why it gets hard because we don't want to change, right? So for example, right. So first of all, um, the most important thing that you can do once you've got your OKRs written is to then try. So the way that I think about it is that your OKRs, especially your KRs, but all the whole thing, they kind of sit on top of your backlog as a filter.
Okay.
And so now we're going to take
Yeah.
everything that we had planned on doing. Now we've got new goals. We've got OKRs, right? Okay. So now everything that we planned on doing, will it pass through the filter, right? Does it help? Do we believe it'll help us achieve our objective and
Right.
our key results? If the answer is yes, then it makes it through. And if the answer is no, it goes into the not now bucket, right?
And to me, that's kind of how I think about core values as well. So it's 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 another filter, right? The whole point of core values, I kind of think of them as guardrails that you kind of, if you're bumping up against the guardrail, you
Yeah.
might want to question. And that's a very similar mindset to a filter. And so what if too much or too little pass through the filter, right? Because it's kind of like, okay, if what if like nothing passes through, and then, and then,
Yeah.
well, someone told me I needed to do this thing,
Yeah. And
so
so
I
then
must do the right thing.
this is sort of the third biggest, and this is, I think this is huge, is that when we set goals with OKRs, we are explicitly expecting or demanding of our teams, whether we actually say to them or not, we should say to them, we're expecting them to do product discovery
Mm,
because this is like
interesting.
traditionally, right? It's team, go build this thing, right? Make it
Hmm.
red and finish it by Friday.
Right.
You're like, okay, cool. We know how to do that.
Right.
Build the thing, we'll make it red, we'll get it done by Friday, no problem, boss, right? Client or whatever, right? When we set goals as OKRs, we're not telling them what to make anymore,
Mhm.
right? We're saying get 50% of the revenue to come through the mobile channel, right? There is an infinite combination of code copy and design, value proposition, pricing strategy, whatever it is, right? That will deliver that behavior. And the team is inevitably is unlikely to nail it out of the gate. And so there should be an expectation that the team is going to do discovery work, learning work, experimentation, research, lean UX, whatever you want to call it, right? There's 1,000 different names, design thinking, right? Lean startup. It's all basically the same idea, is that we are going to make a series of assumptions about what we believe will deliver this behavior, and we are going to test those assumptions. We're going to
Right.
form hypotheses from those assumptions, and we're going to test them. And if our tests reveal that this idea doesn't move the needle in the direction that we decided is important and the focus for us, then we are going to discard that, but kill pivot, uh, and probably not persevere, right?
Right.
In most
Right.
cases.
That's so interesting. So Stride helps companies with product discovery all the time, and we tie them, the discoveries, to OKRs, and we make them brief on purpose because we have to get to the work of doing the work. But we do try to help companies pause. Now, the way you've described it, though, is very interesting because you said, I don't think you used these words, but what I heard was like, okay, there is this inherent expectations that team will just know to do this.
Yeah.
But like what if they don't, or what if they don't have time, or what if they feel they already know it? Like to me, immediately, I'm going, there's so many reasons. As if I'm a even if I'm a product manager, or if I'm a scrum master, if I'm a software engineer, there's a million reasons why I can convince myself that I don't need to pause to do this discovery because I don't have time. I already know it. I got this. You know
Yeah.
what I'm like,
Yeah.
I can see that like, I could see that struggle. Um,
Well,
and so I think it's really important for folks that aren't on the teams doing the work to really understand why it's important to give teams the space and the autonomy to really take that time,
yeah.
not a year, maybe a couple weeks, to really discover and really identify how which of the infinite solutions you're gonna do, or this is what I think I see is a big problem often. Saying, we are going to pivot. We are going to kill this idea. We are not going to do this idea post discovery, because that's also very scary.
Yeah.
And so, if you have 90 days to achieve a key result, if it's a quarterly key result, now we're saying also you need to figure out how you're going to get from A to B if you want to get from A to B. Um,
If you can. I mean, look,
yeah,
some of the
yes,
learning, like we talk a lot about the learning of kill, pivot, persevere, like feature specific. Is this the right feature? Is this the right design? Is this the right
right,
implementation strategy? Um, but the learning also encompasses, are we chasing the right goal? Is this the right behavior change? Is it realistic? Is our number realistic, right? Is 50% retention rate feasible in our industry, right? I just wrote this case study on my blog, which is fascinating to me, about Fender guitars. I was reading about Fender guitars. Fender guitars gets 1 million new customers every year in English speaking countries, just in English speaking countries, right? Of those 1 million new customers, 90% abandon the guitar within the first
wow,
year,
wow,
right?
wow,
90%,
huh,
right? And so their goal, like the CEO's goal, is to double his retention rate from 10% to 20%. Because if you can get those folks to stick with the guitar, they're kind of the LTV on them is like 10 grand over the course of their life, right? So that's his metric. Now that seems like the right metric, but maybe when they start doing discovery, right? Maybe it's, who knows? I'm speaking out completely speculative now, but maybe that's not the right metric to
right,
chase. Maybe it's not to increase sort of acquisition or retention after the first year, but maybe it's to increase lifetime value from those who actually stick with the guitar from
right,
10K to 15K,
right,
right?
right.
The discovery work helps us with that aspect of the
Hmm.
conversation as well, right? And I think it's perfectly legitimate, as long as you're being transparent about it, at the end of that 90 days to come back to a client or a stakeholder or whatever and say, look, it's not that we haven't been able to build the right features, it's that we're chasing the wrong goals, right? This
Right.
is not based on our discovery work. Customers don't want to do this,
Yep.
or they want
Yep.
to do something else, or the likelihood of us, increasing, retention rate from 10 to 20% is super low. We can't, like, there's only so many folks who are going to play the guitar for more than a
Right. Right. That's fascinating. So, as much as I feel like we could talk about this for 15 days,
year. Could, yeah. Yeah.
um, I appreciate these insights. I hope everyone listening really kind of found some nuggets in this talk. I know I certainly did. Um, Lots of us have been doing OKRs. We really embrace them and also understand that it's a constant, continuous improvement. It is something that we want to get better at every quarter, every year to help drive the value that in our businesses that we love so much. So it was great to see you. It was
Same.
great to chat with you. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks so much, Debbie.
All right. Bye.